This is a 29-pound certified Angus beef boneless chuck roll. We're gonna break it down. Let's get into it. Breaking down a chuck roll, you need to establish what your intent is. What are you looking for? What's the goal? A lot of the content I see is primarily just generating chuck roasts, chuck steaks, stew meat. Now that's perfectly fine, absolutely nothing wrong with that. But being Wise Guys Barbecue, I'm looking to see how we can exploit this and get cuts that we can get on the smoker, get out there on the grill, because there are some hidden treasures in a chuck roll that I'm about to show you coming up in a minute. So we're gonna be removing this to expose everything underneath, and there lies our Fugazi brisket. At that point, all we're gonna have to do is polish it up, trim it up a little bit, but along the way to reach that point, I'm gonna show you some pretty interesting shit here. So let's get going. First thing you would wanna do is remove this entire chuck eye, but I'm not gonna do that all in one piece. I'm gonna remove the top layer of that chuck eye, and then I'm gonna remove the bottom layer off the Fugazi brisket, which is technically called the chuck underblade. First thing we wanna do is get a little bit of this tissue, some of this darkened meat trimmed off on the top. A lot of this is oxidation. Like this part of the meat is what's exposed to the bone, some of the rib bones, so you'll see a little greater oxidation in that. But I just wanna remove all that. And I'm just basically gonna go in and do some preliminary trimming before we really start getting into it. You see a little bit of a bone tissue here. This you need to get off. That was what was in contact with the underblade, or the top blade, I should say, that scapula bone. So we want to get that stuff off because it's very, very gnarly, it's very tough. Now, as far as breaking these down, you know, there's no right or wrong way. You can go at this. Like I said, it's all about what your goal is. And that will dictate your path. All right, get this over. All right, I'm gonna begin to remove this upper cap of the chuck eye. And there are seams, there are always seams to follow. As you can see, I'm removing this right now. A lot of meat cutting is done with your fingers. It's all about locating seams and following those seams. Once I get this removed with my fingers, I can come in here with my knife and begin to keep opening that up. Normally, a lot of videos I see, a lot of breakdown chuck rolls I see, they're always primarily going after these chuck eye steaks, which I'm telling you are fantastic. But there's very little yield in this. You're only talking about 3, maybe 4 steaks at the most. So we're gonna capture greater potential with this piece of meat because we're gonna cut them into boneless country style ribs that these can go on the smoker. We can season these down, get them out there on the grill, get them out there on the smoker. All right, let's get our short ribs going. Very simple. I'm just gonna go in and cut like we're cutting steaks. And once I get each cut, I'm gonna go in between each cut, just cut them in half, and then just open it up. Now, if you wanna start this off with your just cutting 2 or 3 chuck eye steaks, perfectly fine. But what happens as you're continuing down on this chuck eye, the muscle changes dramatically. The characteristics change quite a bit. So at this point, once you get to here, it's really not suitable for grilling or faster cooking. You really need to have a different purpose for this. So that's why we're doing boneless country style chuck short ribs for you today. We're about ready to get started with the star of the show, the Fugazi brisket. Now you might be wondering to yourself, what the hell is a Fugazi brisket? Well, it's basically a mock brisket. It's a fake brisket. You see this tapered part up here, I'm gonna call it the point. Why am I gonna call it the point? It looks like the point of a brisket. And as you move on down the anatomy, you begin to see it fan out a little bit and narrow a little bit. So here's our point of the Fugazi brisket. Here's our flat of the Fugazi brisket. All we need to do now is trim this up a little bit and polish it up a little bit like we're trimming a beef brisket for competition or like they do in the restaurant. So I'm gonna trim off some of the external features, some fat, some connective tissue, this neck area, which is not gonna be suited for this, but I'm gonna get this trimmed off a little bit. You know, we're pretty much done with this. We can go on and clean it up a lot more, but for most intensive purposes, we're done. And this side here, this would be considered the fat side up. So I'm not gonna go on and continue to take any more of that fat off. I'm probably gonna square up this narrow ends a little bit. Like I said, it's only polishing up at this point, just cleaning and polishing, cleaning and polishing. And man, I'd have to say this thing weighs maybe 14 to 15 pounds. So that's right in the wheelhouse for your standard average brisket once it's trimmed down. And there it is. The Fugazi Brisket. You've never seen anything like this before. I originated this, I invented this. I first did it 10 years ago. Like I said, when I was playing around cutting some chucks, I said, what can I do with this? And I began to explore removing layers and layers and layers. Lo and behold, what did I find? Something that looks just like the Fugazi Brisket. So we're gonna be grinding our trim. And our fat, as you can see, we got very little fat waste on here. So I would say, for the most part, we probably got about almost a 90% yield out of here. So it's economical. We spent $5.88 a pound, and we turned it into retail cuts that average anywhere from $8 to $11 a pound. So not only that, you're saving money, it's a whole hell of a lot of fun. Get in the kitchen, grab a knife, and just go at it as best you can. And there's no wrong way about doing it. So we're gonna move on. We're gonna do our ground beef. We got about 15.5 pounds of trim here. We're gonna get it all ground. Now, if you're sitting at home watching this and you're saying to yourself, I don't have a meat grinder at home, I strongly urge you to check out a previous video we did a while back where we actually ground meat using a food processor. You won't quite get the same consistency as ground meat. It will be chopped meat, but you can certainly pull it off without the need of a grinder. So let me get started right here. All right, I had so much fun doing this for you today because I got to introduce you to the Fugazi Brisket. If you like what we did for you today, please like, subscribe, and hype the video. Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to see you next time because this ain't over yet.